Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I am your host, Mike Luke, and checking with helium, joined by the boss, Saul Bookman. Hello, Saul Bookman.
America, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
To save the motherfucking day, yeah. Let's go.
I was worried about that one, man.
Yeah, so was
17. Yikes. Yeah. And yeah, I did not, but that, yeah, we will get to that. We'll get to that. Also, Steve Kerr clearly does not like Jason Tatum. I don't know what it is, but we will get to that. All right, we're going to talk a lot of Arizona football today. We're going to talk some Arizona football, what that means on the from the TV rankings. Saul Bookman had something very good about that. NFL talent on this U of A roster. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Nick Foles. Nick Foles announced his retirement, and here's my story with Nick Foles. Nick Foles was the most down-to-earth person I think that I've ever come across. I had a class next to Nick Foles when we were undergrads. Not together. Yes. So
that makes two of us on a pod that have had classes with U of A quarterbacks.
Wow. Okay.
No, did you hear, Mike? It wasn't with him. It was next to him. The classroom over.
That's not the same.
It is the same for the point of this story, though, Saul Bookman. Listen. So every single day, this guy, keep in mind, record-setting quarterback at the U of A, going to play in the NFL. Every single day, he wore the same exact outfit. It was absolutely fantastic. He would wear gray sweatpants. He would wear a blue U of A shirt or a blue U of A jacket, and he would have a hat on very, very low. And he was very, very kind. He was very quiet. He was just really kind of a man of the people. He would sit by himself in the food court. He would do he would just do a lot of different stuff. He was a good guy. And, one of those things that I don't think he never looked like somebody that success was going to change him. Obviously got a Super Bowl MVP out of it. One of the best quarterbacks to ever come through here, if not the best. Nick Foles, I give you a salute emoji, my friend.
I mean, they didn't call him big, Nick for just because of his game on the field. He knew what he was doing with the gray sweatpants in class. Come on now.
Oh, he did.
He was ahead of his time. Let's go. Hey, listen, Nick Foles was he was an amazing player for us, obviously, and just a genuinely good dude. I actually met him at the Pac-12 tournament a couple years ago, and he was just a super nice guy, really down to earth. Loved talking about the U of A, and I think we're all proud of his success in the NFL, especially with what he did in Philadelphia and winning a Super Bowl. So he's always repped us proud for sure.
Yeah, no, good stuff on Nick Foles. Wish you very well in retirement, Nick Foles. Again, Super Bowl MVP. Arizona's got an NBA Finals MVP and a Super Bowl MVP. Pretty cool stuff. I'd be curious how many schools have that. Probably not many. Certainly not ASU. That's for sure. Okay, now.
That's actually a really good question. Is what other schools have a Super Bowl and a Finals MVP?
Yeah, I'm off the top of my head. I can't think of any. But that's also just off the top of my head. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe there is.
Our crack researcher Jacob is actually looking it up right now as we speak.
All right. Jacob Franklin, feel free to interject at any point, my friend. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about Jedd Fisch. When he took over, said something that I thought was a very interesting point. And again, I know we don't like how Jedd Fisch left, but he did a lot of good stuff here. We have to admit that. But he said in one of his press conferences, he was asked about, getting bigger on the line. And he said, it's going to be really difficult for me. I'm just being honest with you, to be able to go in and get 4- and 5-star offensive linemen out of the South. He says those guys generally don't leave. And if they leave, they're going to USC or Ohio State. You generally don't get those. He said, but there is something, he said, that can be unlocked here at Arizona. And he said that is recruiting Polynesian football players. He said a lot of times theyese guys are kind of under the radar because they're either in they're playing in Hawaii or they're in a bunch of different places. And if you look at it, he was able to build a very good line last year on both sides. And there was a ton of Polynesian influence. You had your Jonah Savaiinaea, you had your Wendall Maae. On the other side, you had a Tetairoa, you had a Tyler Manoa, a Tia Savea. He said that was always something that he thought was almost a little bit of a cheat code when it came to getting big on both sides. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to see. Schools like Arizona need to recruit the Paulies, Saul Bookman. That is my initial thoughts on this.
I 1,000,000%. And listen, I will die on that hill. I think after Dick Tomey left, we kind of lost that pipeline for a little bit. We still had shreds of it, but it wasn't nearly as predominant as it was under Tommy, because Tommy very much embraced the Polynesian pipeline. I am so happy to see that is coming back in full force, because that is the one way you can equalize the playing field. Because listen, that talent is strong.
Yeah.
It is big. And it can produce a lot of power at multiple positions, and just the desire. I think the DNA. Listen, from everything that I've seen and heard, and the players and people I've spoke to from that community, is just that, like, there is a bond there that is very family centric. And because of that, there's this appreciation to take care of each other. And I think when you're talking about a football team, you need that. You need that kind of DNA to help push everybody along and help everybody stay on track. And I think that's the thing that gets overlooked about having the Polynesian DNA in your program. So I mean, I think this is great that Brett Brennan is just going right after that, because he needs to.
And you look at this roster right now, and we're going to go through a lot of these players, but I think two guys really kind of hit the nail on the head as to why that this is an underutilized at least by some coaches. Jonah Savaiinaea. Jonah Savaiinaea is probably going to be a first-round pick. We're going to talk about him later. And if he's not a first-round pick, he's going to be a second-round pick. He's on all the boards. And Jonah Savaiinaea was a low 3-star player. You might say, Mike, why was he a 3-star player? Well, I'll tell you. He was a 3-star player because, first of all, in COVID. Second of all, it's a little bit more difficult at times to be able to evaluate all the Hawaiian football players. That's just the way it is. We had Biggins on before, and he says a lot of times those guys slip through the cracks. The other one, too, Wendall Maae. This is a very interesting one. He went to Long Beach Poly. He was a 2-star player. He's another one that's probably going to play in the NFL at some point. He was committed to Morgan State, and he went to Long Beach Poly. Jed Fish swooped in, got him as well. A 2- and a 3-star player. One's going to be a first-round pick. The other one's probably going to be a 3- or a 4-year starter. There are a ton of under-the-radar players when it comes to this, and they are big people. They are very large. They are naturally strong.
Who do you think is who's the number one guy? Like, if you had to rank them, who's the number one guy at the top? Would it be Jonah?
For as far as
just talent,
pure talent on the football team?
Yes,
it's T-Mac, then it's Jonah.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Yeah, no, but it's T-Mac, then it's Jonah. People don't realize. No, you're good.
My bad. Yeah, it's T-Mac. That's. All right. I'm sorry, people. I need to get my shit together, because that was just the dumbest question ever.
But T-Mac also Polynesian, though, Saul. Maybe you were out thinking all of us there by going with that, because T-Mac also Polynesian as well. But Jonah's an interesting case, because when he came here, and he looked totally different. He was 6'4", 315, 320 pounds. You could see ab muscle. He looked like somebody that should be at Georgia or Alabama, just the way that he looked physically. And I remember we had Tyler Owens on the show, and I asked him about that point blank. I said, and he said, listen, he said, everybody has their different stories. Everybody's different. He says, so I don't want to pigeonhole, but I'm about to pigeonhole. He said, these are generally very strong people. He says, and I asked him, I was like, like, how so? And he says, generally, and he says, not all the time, but he says, when I get these guys under their squats to be able to see what they can do first, and he said they are generally probably about a junior coming in as a freshman. He said there's just an inherent strength with them, and he said it's not all the time, but it's most of the time, and it's kind of a little bit of a cheat code there. So again, both those guys, though, I think are really, really good testaments to being kind of under the radar type players there, Saul Bookman.
Yeah, I agree. The development of those guys has been phenomenal. And you hope that's what's going to encourage the pipeline to continue, because you will need that development to continue in order to be able to, perform at a high level. Because right now across the country, I think there's just so many questions about Arizona in terms of what is their stability going to be like, with the new head coach coming in. One thing is that these guys are not going to have a severe drop off. It's just how far did they improve, if at all, in order to elevate Arizona to what we all hope is going to be a top 10 finish this season and a CFP berth, right? And I think with this community And with this DNA, I definitely feel like the drop off is not going to be severe, and the development will continue. That's what makes me feel good about Brennan in the future of Arizona, is that the Polynesian pipeline is going to help sustain this to where we're not going to have severe drop offs. We're just going to keep reloading, and the development of these guys and their nature to not want to just jump up and transfer immediately. They're going to want to stick with the program and see it out because, again, right, it's all about family. That's what I'm encouraged about.
I think the character, you just hit on the character aspect as well, too. And I think that is a massive part of this. These are people that are very generally grounded. Listen, Noah Fifita, T-Mac, they could have gone to other places. They could have gotten more money. And Les Fifita and obviously Noah talked about it. And Brent Brennan was on Jim Rome the other day, and they asked him about Noah Fifita. And he said, well, when they told me that they were going to come back, I asked him how do you want to go about doing it? And he said, no, coach, we want to be able to show you that we're all in on you. So how do you want to do this? That's something that's just from a different cloth in 2024. You generally don't see this. This is very much of a me thing. And when you've got, listen, let's be honest here. When you got Noah Fifita, you got T-Mac coming back, and they go and they're like, how do you want to do this, coach? That's different, Saul.
Mike, could you imagine, like, and I challenge anybody out there, give me a scenario, okay, where you take over an organization, whether it be, car sales or real estate or some type of, PH&X, whatever. And everybody's bought into what you're all about, and you leave. And the next guy that comes in not only has to impress upon everybody what his style and what his motivation is going to be, but he's also got to convince you not to transfer out with the coach that you loved.
Right.
And you only had a couple days to do it.
Right.
That is what Brett Brennan did. I just don't think people really give him too much credit for it. It was a damn near unbelievable job. Now, it helps when you have guys in the program, because listen, when we go back and think about Noah, he himself said that he thought he was going to Washington.
Right.
You know what I mean? But T-Mac was kind of undecided. And right. I think because T-Mac was a little undecided, it kind of gave Noah a little bit of pause, like, oh, maybe I just need to think about this a little bit more. And then they all start talking, and then Brendan comes in and he convinces them that this is the place to stay and stay as a unit, stay as a family. And why ruin a good thing? Because it does definitely feel like we have a good thing going. Like, that's just so unbelievable and just so rare in today's game.
Now, I'm gonna read you off starters for this year's team, Saul. All of Polynesian descent. These are good football players. Noah Fifita, T-Mac, Jonah Savaiinaea, Wendall Maae, Rhino, Jacob Manu, Tetairoa. I just named 6 guys that are amongst.
7. You named 7.
Oh, 7. Yeah, I apologize there.
I got my fingers up right here as you were speaking them.
I wear glasses. You don't. There's a reason I wear glasses. Maybe they were just a little defective today. But these are all, we're going to talk about this later. Noah Fifita, one of the best football players in the country, on the Davey O'Brien award list. By the way, congratulations. T-Mac, no matter what Saul Bookman says, probably the best NFL prospect on this.
Oh, Jesus. The slander.
Then Jonah Savaiinaea, first-round pick. Wendall Maae, going to be a 4-year starter, probably going to be in the NFL. Rhino, looking at your left tackle. Jacob Manu, another one in this, kind of the quiet one in all of this. Half Mexican, half Polynesian. And then you got Tetairoa. These are all difference makers. These aren't guys that are kind of your second or third. And what I'm very interested to see is what kind of, now that you've got this pipeline going, how does it continue to unfold? Because again, it's a close-knit community. And a lot of these guys, here's the other thing that's very impressive to me. Wendall Maae, 2-star kid. Jonah Savaiinaea, low 3-star. Noah, 3-star kid. Nobody really knows what to make of him. Jacob Manu, 2-star. Tai, 2-star. Rhino, 3-star. These were not highly rated players. That is the cheat code.
It's all going to be dependent on how good they perform this year and what the vibe is behind the scenes with Brennan. How is the culture? Is it continued? Is it the real deal? There's no reason to think that anything would change behind the scenes because you've heard nothing but great things at San Jose State. So I think that this will continue again. But now, again, it just depends on how good they play. If they come out and they go 6-6 and have a flubber of a year, things change. It doesn't matter how good the culture is. If you're 6-6 and you don't even come close to expectations, then you got to reset, and that'll give other players pause for concern, but I just don't feel like that's going to happen.
Kyle Whittingham, the great Kyle Whittingham at Utah, also does a very good job recruiting the Islands. Generally, his recruiting classes are somewhere in the 40s to 50s. And I read an article about this last night. I was doing show prep, and I thought it was an interesting point that he made. He said kind of the same thing that we were just talking about earlier, the strength, the loyalty, all of that. But Saul, just like you, he said, but we still got to win games. He says these are loyal. He says these are loyal people. They're also smart. They're not dumb. They're not just going to go somewhere just because they're loyal and say, oh, well, somebody else went there. He said, you got to win football games. And he said at Utah, that's what we've tried to do. We've instilled a culture where we're very open to them. We're very welcoming to them, but they also know that we're probably going to win football games. That's the same thing here that you got to get at the U of A. Like you said, can't do 6-6, can't do it, won't have it, can't do it.
Utah, BYU was a pretty strong pipeline as well for Polynesian kids, but there's also a religious factor to that as well. Obviously, as we know, BYU is a Mormon school, and so there's a religious aspect to that, and so that because of that, you've kind of got your foot in the door a little bit when you are recruiting kids from that background. But Kyle's right. Like, it doesn't matter. Listen, some of the most vicious basketball games I've ever had were at a Mormon church. And so if you don't think that the Mormon kids are absolutely aggressively competitive, you are absolutely out of your mind. So right. You got to win. You got to win, because at the end of the day, I don't care what my religion is. I care about what that scoreboard says. I can follow my religion anywhere I want to go in the country, but we got to win games. And right. So as a Polynesian kid, that's one thing. That's probably the first thing that you're looking at. And then everything else is right behind it. Don't get me wrong, because faith is important to a lot of people. And right. So having that in the DNA is important. And obviously, as we know, Arizona is not too far away from, a pretty big Mormon population as well. So I just think that everything kind of feeds itself. But at the end of the day, you got to win games in order to hold on to these kids. As long as you have everything else in line and take care of things on the field, then you're going to be okay.
And then, so that, which leads me to my next point with Brent Brennan. He said, we've done a fairly good job at San Jose State. He said we had to be resourceful, and, he wasn't able to get all of the players over here. I think that he wanted is, that it were some of the Polynesians, Sione, I can't remember the name, defensive tackle, all conference kid. I think a lot of people thought he'd come here. He entered the portal, came back, but Brennan said that's a massive part. He said, when I was there under Dick Tomey, we had a lot of really good players. You had a Brandon Manamuliana who was who played in the NFL for 15 years. You had an Edwin Mulatalo, starting left tackle for 15 years. You just had a huge part of it. So I'm also intrigued too that you've got somebody that understands the history. Now, again, I'm not somebody that ever is saying that I need to have somebody that's an alum or something, but Arizona's a different place. And I think that's something that Jed Fish understood. He understood that you're not just going to say, all right, just bring me all your 5-star kids, the Father Flanagan type stuff. You are going to have to find guys that fit. And I think this community does exactly that. And again, some of these guys too, like I said, not outside the T-Mac, not highly rated guys. So I'm very impressed by that, Saul Bookman.
I think Arizona has done a very good job of setting themselves up to at least have everything physically in place to be able to compete with the big dogs. Now, listen, their practice facilities, they're not like the Alabama caliber, but they're good. They're very good. They're not bad. You get great weather, and everything else can be handled. Right. And so the things that, like, when you look at like LSU or Alabama or those kind of schools, right, they do have a few extra bells and whistles, right? Like Alabama has a barber shop that right. players can go to anytime, right? LSU has, I think they have actually Clemson has a whole like student athlete media department where they teach these kids to come in and like kind of learn the media space and do their own podcasts and stuff like that, which I think is really cool. Something that I wish Arizona would implement. Actually, I pitched that idea like 8 years ago, but it's whatever. And,
what has he ever amounted to after that? Hey, it's not
like, what a loser. And so like those extras are important, but at the end of the day, do you have the culture that fits what I want to be a part of? And that's where the coaching comes in. And I do credit Jed Fish for understanding what limitations Arizona has, how to eliminate those limitations from a recruit's perspective, and to give them the very best experience as a college athlete possible. And I think when you're a college athlete at the University of Arizona, first of all, you're going to be adored if you're a rock star, just like T-Mac and Noah are. Right. But also, there's an element to this where you're just going to be kind of left alone. You go to Tuscaloosa, you can't go out in public because you're going to get mauled. Everybody's going to want autographs and stuff like that. In Tucson, we have some tact. We have some class. We just, hey, you do you. I'm going to root for you. And after you're done with your meal, maybe I'll ask you for a picture.
Let me follow up on a point you just made. I think it's an interesting point where you talked about, kind of the, the nuance involved. You run a company. And I think one of the things about PHNX is there's very good camaraderie, I think, with pretty much everybody here. How is again, like, I'm sure there's, anytime you got to deal with stuff, I get it. But what is, from a GM's perspective, because I also think of it as from a coach perspective, what is the line that you try to have between, all right, I need everybody to get along, but we also got to be able to put the product out on the, the product out on the internet, et cetera. When you're going through that, when you're going through your checklist, how do you try to balance that? Because I think it's kind of indicative of what a coach would have to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do follow kind of a coach's perspective, because I did coach back in the day, coached high school basketball, and the number one thing is always communication. Like, you've got to communicate with everybody. You almost got to over communicate at times, right? Because when somebody inevitably does something that you don't feel like aligns with what you're trying to do, instead of just telling them they did something wrong, you got to explain the why. And that's where I think a lot of coaches get lost. Like, I think some people think that because they're the coach, you've got to listen to me. Today's day and age with these younger players, it just is not going to be like that, because they want to know, why am I doing something that doesn't make sense to me? Right. And if you explain the why and how one thing can affect another, then they'll understand it, they'll perform harder, and they'll give you everything they got. And I think that's kind of the approach we take here in terms of, like, listen, it's not because I want you to produce more content. It's because if you don't produce more content, we won't have a job. Right. So we've got to produce content. Now, that's obviously a very baseline level of what our approach is here. But you kind of get the understanding. Like, you got to understand the full 360 view in order for me to get everything out of a certain player. Otherwise, they won't buy in.
And how much of it is knowing the personnel as well? I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about somebody like Craig Morgan. Craig Morgan's a legend. He's been, in the media for, Craig's also not 21. But you're also, it's a place where you also hire a lot of younger people as well. As a coach, as a GM, how much of that is knowing what makes each person tick to be able to get that best out of them?
If you don't know what makes a person tick, or what I like to call it I don't know if you've ever read the book, but listen, you got a girlfriend now, so you better read this book. It's the 5 love languages, right? You got to know what the love languages are. Some people are, it's like physical touch. Some people are like words of affirmation. Some people gifts, service. Right? Like, you don't know how anybody respond. Yeah, and quality time. And you don't know how people are going to respond to certain things. I can be harder or firmer with other people than I can with certain other people, right? So you have to have a little finesse in terms of understanding what they're all about and their background, where they came from, how they grew up, where they, how they developed their skills, the whole 9 yards. It's got to be a part of the process if you're a coach, or if you're a GM, or if you're a boss, or whatever. Because if you don't buy into the people, and you don't understand where they come from, and you don't take the time to know who they are and where they come from, you're going to lose them, because it's going to feel like that you genuinely don't care about them. And that's not the way you got to approach it. And Brett Brennan showed you that in the very first instances of him being on campus, having meetings after meetings after meetings, and then, reaffirming those meetings with more meetings, and in order to make sure everybody felt really good about the decision that they were going to make. Because while to us, it's about keeping players, to them, it's the most important decision of their lives, because this might be the decision that takes me to the NFL or not. So how do I go about this? And Brett Brennan did a fantastic job of convincing these players to stay.
I think Noah made a really good point about that too, where he said, what really impressed me immediately was that he said, listen, at the end of the day, you guys all, and he said this is basically his first message. At the end of the day, you guys all have to do what's best for you. I totally understand that. Here's all I want is just give me an opportunity before you make a decision. Let me get to know you. You get to know me. And he said you could obviously tell that he had done his research on us because he knew some of my favorite things. He knew, obviously, he'd watched film about us. And he said, here's how I can see you fitting in. What do you think about that? And it goes a step further. He said they've spent a lot of time looking at last year's film because, again, it's not going to be the same offense, but he asks them, he says it's more of a kind of a partnership. He said, all right, what kind of plays did you guys run last year that you feel that we should incorporate into this offense because it's going to be a different one? So that's what Noah said. It was far more of a kind of a give and take. And he said that just really impressed me because, a lot of times you get a coach that comes in and basically just says, yeah, we're going to do it this way, take it or leave it. And he said there was none of that with him. And I think that's a very interesting approach that he took.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's so much homework.
Yeah.
That's overwhelming.
Right.
Think about it. That's like 70 plus dudes that you've got to do your homework on and understand what they're about, where they're coming from, how you envision them fitting into your program. I'm sure that was not easy. I'm sure that was a lot of long nights, a lot of homework. A lot of the assistant coaches are probably helping him out as well, and like staff and stuff like that. Like, because you only have a short window of time, 48 hours, 72 hours to really make an impression on a kid. Otherwise, they're probably going somewhere else, probably up north to Washington. So I don't know how he pulled it off. I don't know the amount of work that went into pulling it off in order to understand these kids and their backgrounds, but man, kudos to him. And I would love the playbook on that one because that's impressive as hell.
Are we underrating and maybe something we haven't talked about in all of this and maybe keeping everybody together? And that's Circle K on 6th Street by the U of A?
I mean, I think we are. I don't think we're appreciating it enough because to keep people in the inner circle, you have to back the K.
You have
that's exactly what they're all about.
And here's the thing. If I'm Brent Brennan, I'm saying, listen, we got a beautiful practice facility. It's also right across the street right there. We see it. It's Circle K. And I have a hard time believing that at least wasn't part of the discussion because, again, I've seen multiple football players in that Circle K. So, again, I don't know for a fact that it wasn't a thing.
Mike, I feel like this is a no-brainer, but remember how we had the Back the A shirt, limited edition, because if you didn't buy it right when it came out, you probably didn't get it because it was only up there for like 2 weeks. Why don't we create a Back the K shirt in that same design?
Dude, yes. I would rock. I've got an Inner Circle hat. If I could have a Back the K, oh my God.
Branded? Dude, I'm all for it.
Back the K, yes, absolutely. I would rock that everywhere. It is funny. One guy at the football practice today said, man, you're like a walking advertisement for Circle K now. And so I go in there because I go in there with my Inner Circle hat all the time. So, which I'm very proud of. But you also might say, Saul Bookman, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. You would be right. Join Inner Circle for free, just like Saul Bookman, by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. I very much like that idea, Saul. I think we're very much onto something there.
I think we're gonna make it happen.
Yes.
Now, also, I just want to say this out loud because I'm struggling. But listen, folks, I love Mike. You know that. I love his setup. He's got his home studio, but I am actually actively looking for a studio space to where we can actually do in-person shows for Mike down in Tucson. So if anybody knows of a space out there, not somebody's house, not somebody's garage, but if anybody knows of any space out there that can be utilized, please hit me up in my DMs. And if I don't follow you on Twitter, hit me up on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. Check it out. All kinds of good stuff. This is very true to quote. All right, check it out. Circle K. Also, Game Time, Saul Bookman. Might say to yourself, okay, now with Game Time, I want to be able to go to a game, or I want to be able to go to a last second event.
Mike, I just bought tickets for the New Mexico game already. I bought 2 tickets, and I'm in the corner of the end zone, but I'm high enough so I can see the whole field. And you know how much I paid? $49 for 2 tickets.
Let me guess where you got it off. Game Time. This is true.
Absolutely.
All right, now here's the great thing with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying the tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and get a redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time app. Last minute tickets lowest prices guaranteed. Check it out. Again, Game Time. Now, you might say to yourself, where does Jacob Franklin get all these tickets to go to these cool baseball road trips? I am assuming the Game Time.
It was absolutely Game Time.
Yes.
Yeah, Derek and I got tickets to the All-Star, the Futures game for like $6.
Nice.
We literally walked in the door for $6.
Nice.
And it's Game Time. So that's where it's at. We will just leave it at that. Game Time. If it's good enough for the very tall Jacob Franklin or the very short Mike Luke, it is good enough for anybody. They take on people of all sizes. Game Time. Check it out. All right. Now,
wait. I have an answer from your guys' question from earlier. I did some digging.
Okay.
I found 2 colleges in my very extensive, which was 5 minutes, research. Kansas being one of them.
Oh, Kansas.
Paul Pierce.
Okay.
And I had to leave this up because John Riggins, a fullback for the Washington
Redskins.
Yeah,
okay.
And he was Super Bowl 17.
I didn't know you went to Kansas.
Yep.
Right.
And then the other school, it's actually just became a school.
Give me the school, and I want to name the player.
Okay. Cal.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers.
Uh-huh.
Oh, not Jason Kidd.
Paul Westphal.
You guys, you're thinking too far back here.
Oh, Jaylen Brown. Duh.
Oh yeah. Damn it.
Duh.
This year. Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool.
Here's one. Who's the best running back ever from Kansas? You should get this, Saul Bookman. You should definitely get this.
Stump Mitchell?
They call him the Kansas Comet.
What?
Gale Sayers.
Oh, I did not know that they called him the Kansas Comet.
It's like, you should know this. Random.
Have you guys not heard of Gale Sayers? He's very good.
No, I know who Gale Sayers is. I just didn't know he was called the Kansas Comet.
We don't have 4 degrees, Mike Luke.
Look at this. Mr. Tyler Warden knew. He already had it in there. Mr. Tyler Warden, very much thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. I love little trivia like that. That's good stuff, though, Jacob Franklin. Either way, Arizona and very esteemed company, though. Good stuff. All right. Now, Saul Bookman has sent something at 3:24 a.m. Yesterday in the Slack. I know this because I got up at 4:45 this morning, and I was thinking to myself, is Saul Bookman already awake by how he sent this? Saul, did you get up very early this morning? Be honest.
Listen, man, my dogs are annoying as hell, and they like to lick themselves in the middle of the night. And sometimes when that happens, I wake up and then I can't go back to sleep. So I just start looking at show prep and thinking about what I'm going to talk about the next day. And I came across this cool thing on the Big 12 Talk group in Facebook, and it was Kelly Ford. So K Ford Ratings on Twitter. He actually did the top 10 games each week in terms of watchability. And this is the list. It's kind of hard to see, but Arizona's on there 6 times. Can you guess how many times ASU's on there?
None.
Big fat 0. But
they're number 1 in my heart.
Which is crazy. But the crazy part about this is he goes through every single week, and we have 6 of the top, but we are not in the top 25 in terms of watchable teams, which is really ironic because, Arizona, for whatever reason, their schedule and the watchability rating, and he has a science to this. So I'm not going to besmirch him because the science is pretty cool. And if you want to learn more about it, just go to his website. It's pretty dope. Kelly Ford Ratings. It's pretty awesome. But then on top of that, it was, I forgot what it is. He had kind of a breakdown overall of just why the percentages are in Arizona's favor in terms of wins, losses. And so if you look on the far right side, in conference wins, there's a 1% chance that Arizona wins all 9 of their conference games. Their most likely scenario is 6, which is at 29%. And then right after that is 5, and right after that is 7 at 19%. So I thought this was pretty cool. And then if you look over on the other side, 8 wins is kind of the gun for Arizona at 28%. They have a 10% chance to win 10, and they have a less than 1% chance to go undefeated during the regular season. Their predicted total is 8-4, basically 5-3 in conference. I'm sorry, 6-3 in conference. I just thought that these measurables were pretty dope. And if you do that along with the Phil Steele metrics, Phil Steele is very low on Arizona. He thinks that they're not going to be able to match their win total from a year ago. Which I mean, 10 wins, but you're looking at 9 during the regular season. I think that's very achievable for Arizona because he has teams like Cincinnati. He has teams like Houston being better than their projected total, but that's based on, this is Phil Steele, that's based on just their performance last year in the Big 12 versus the 2 years prior. But the 2 years prior were not in the Big 12. So that's a kind of a misnomer of a stat that Phil Steele is using. Whereas Arizona, they were in the Pac-12. That was still a legit conference. So I still think that Arizona has plenty of opportunity. The biggest question mark about Arizona for me is always the defensive line. Can the defensive line hold up enough during the season to allow these superstar athletes to be able to perform at a high level? If they can, they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to win 9 or 10 games. If they can't, that's the metric that can shift things a little bit and cause them to win 7 or 8 games. I think 8 games is the bare minimum.
Can you bring that the first one back up again, Mr. Jacob Franklin? I thought there was a couple interesting ones in here. I like the look at, because some of these games are not big time entities and they're looked at as very watchable games. Arizona and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, not a great team this year, but viewed as a very watchable game. Arizona and TCU, who knows? UCF, obviously West Virginia. I mean, these aren't necessarily marquee games, but I think it also shows that Arizona is watchable, which also leads me to believe that I don't understand why Arizona is not one of the 25 most watchable teams, because I think they're going to be incredibly fun and watchable.
Well, it's also based on the opponent. And there's some teams that have schedules that just have more high profile opponents. And that's why they got moved up in the ratings. So there's a complete metric to it. And I'm not going to go through explaining it because I'm going to do a trash job of explaining it. But, obviously Colorado it was like a top 15 team in terms of watchability score, but that's because just about every team that Colorado faces in the Big 12 has got a winning record from a year ago. They're a dominant team. And it's going to be, and obviously the prime effect and all that good stuff. Right. And then obviously it shifts a little bit all over the landscape. But after listening to all this stuff, I did come away with one kind of takeaway that I felt was a little consistent across the board, not only in these ratings, but also there was another pod that I was watching and he kind of did a really great job. I'll pull it up here in a second, but UCF is going to be extremely dangerous this year. They've got a lot of talent. They've got a big quarterback, just like Gus Malzahn liked in his Auburn days with Cam Newton. If Gus Malzahn doesn't screw the pooch, that's going to be a legit team and a very worrisome team to deal with. And we don't get them until just about October 31st, I believe, or November 2nd. And so that's the one team that I'm like, man, Arizona could do very, very well and then get to that game, and that could be a bloodbath. Right. But I expect them to compete every single game, and I expect them to win a majority of their games. Obviously, it's just UCF is that one sleeper team to me, because they had like 4 one-score games last year, and if that changes, they're easily an 8-9 win team, and we're not even talking about them as a sleeper. We're talking about them as a contender in this conference.
You know what's weird about UCF? They've almost just become a football program all into itself. Scott Frost obviously got that thing going. They finished 5th in the nation or whatever. Then Josh Heupel comes in. He parlays that into another bunch of top 25 seasons, gets the job at Tennessee. Now you got Gus Malzahn, who I think is going to be the same thing. I kind of wonder if we're approaching the point with UCF where like another season or two, and you got to start really looking at them as a top 25 type program, man, if we're not already there.
I mean, they're pretty close already. I mean, they got a lot of, their wideout position is ridiculously stacked. Like They got some dudes back there. And they just got a transfer, I think this week or last week as well. That was highly regarded and highly rated 4-star transfer. So I'm telling you, man, dude, I'm so excited for this season. I don't think I've been as excited for a season like this in a very, very long time. Not because of Arizona, but just because of the conference and the depth. I mean, there's a legit shot at 10 teams, 10 out of 16 having a legitimate shot at possibly getting to the Big 12 championship game. That is insane. 10.
Yes.
I'm so stoked.
Very, very exciting. You don't want to know why Arizona's at the top of that list? Because we have good NFL prospects on this team, Saul Bookman. Now, Listen, Arizona's never had 2 first-round picks in the same season. Now, they've had one, I think it was back in 99, where you had Trunk Candidate, who was the last pick in the first, and Dennis Northcutt, a first pick in the second. But Arizona now has a possibility of getting a very real possibility of getting 3 first-round picks. Saul Bookman, very sitting very upright right now. We like it.
My back is hurting.
You know what you're like right now? What was Amari Stoudemire's nickname? Standing tall and talented. That is Saul Bookman. Saul Bookman, tall and talented. But anyways, you've got T-Mac, who, regardless of what anybody says, best prospect on the team. Going to be a first-round pick, obviously. He's also, by the way, he's looked very good. He started doing drills again yesterday. Looked very good. Then you've got Jonah Savaiinaea, probably going to be a first-round pick. Tacario Davis, probably going to be a first-round pick. And if he's not, these guys are going to be in the second. You've got 3 guys right now, Saul, that have very, very real possibilities of being a first-round pick. If you're an Arizona coach and you're able to basically sell people then on, hey, guess what? We've had 4 first-round picks the last 2 years, or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden that becomes fairly interesting.
Program on the rise, baby. That's what this is all about. That's the only... We've been down this road before, Mike, where we've had a great season and then we had to follow it up, and maybe we didn't have so great of a season to follow it up, right? We've been down this road. We've seen this movie before. But tell me why this just feels a little bit different. The only question mark is the conference. Obviously, going to these new environments is going to be a little bit different. So that's a little bit of a wrinkle. But I legitimately feel as good about Arizona football and their future prognosis as I have been in quite a long time. Even under Rich Rod, when Rich Rod came back after that year to the Fiesta Bowl, you felt good going into that season, and then game 1, everything just kind of crapped the bed. Scooby Wright gets hurt against UTSA in the rain, and that was basically the downhill of the season, and we weren't the same since. I don't feel that way. I just feel like overall our talent is just too vast and it's too deep in order to have a flub like that.
It feels sustainable. I'll be honest with you. That Rich Rod team didn't, I mean, it was a good team. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel like a team that should have been like in a BCS game because, again, they were, but there were a lot of games against bad teams. You're winning on a Hail Mary. It just didn't. Last year's team just looked the part. Last year's team, when Noah Fifita went in, just looked different. It didn't feel fluky. It just felt like you were better than the other teams. That's where I'm at with this team. And I've got such faith in Noah Fifita to be that dude. Because again, I don't see Noah Fifita having a bad season. I think that that's going to be very, very, very difficult. But this feels sustainable. Whereas the Rich Rod thing always felt like it was a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I liked Rich Rod as an X's and O's coach.
So did I.
Fantastic. But you had way too many guys that look like me out there. This team doesn't have guys that look like me out there outside of the quarterback, which is
that was the biggest flaw in the Rich Rod system, was that I think Rich Rod thought so highly of his scheme and his system until everybody else started catching up with the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it was about talent development, and the talent development just was not there enough to get these guys from 2 or 3 star athletes to NFL prospects. He hit a couple times here and there, sure. But I mean, even the best player in that era, Scooby Wright and Kadeem Carey, okay? Both of them, Scooby toyed around with the NFL a little bit, didn't play in the NFL very long. He got a couple of training camp options, and that was about it. Kadeem tried to make it with the Bears, got a little bit of run that first year, but not enough to really sustain himself, and he found himself on the outside looking in and then playing in Canada. Outside of that, it was just, the superstars of those teams never really flourished at the next level. You had a couple other guys that played around in the league, obviously, and I'm not taking anything away from them. It's just we just didn't have the depth talent-wise to compete at a high level like we thought Rich Rod was going to be able to implement, and that's ultimately what his downfall was.
I also, and with Rich Rod too, I always got the sense that it was 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. I think he very much looked Arizona as kind of a stepping stone to get back to where he wanted to get. And never with Brent Brennan, I think Brent Brennan wants to be here. I think Brent Brennan, I think that this is I think from a community, from a city perspective, I think this is the kind of job that Brent Brennan wants, where Rich Rod always struck me as the one that was always kind of looking at the shiny lights. What's that?
Yeah.
I see it on the screen.
I want you to put yourself in that position, Mike, and think about it like that. Okay, let's just say, you know, in this world, let's just say, you know, this job gave you everything that you wanted. You made a really good living. I think we're giving you everything you want, I hope. And you know, you're able to do what you want to do on a day-to-day basis. You're able to run things the way you want to run them. Like everything's the way you want to. But then there's this shiny toy out there, right? Maybe it's a different media company. Maybe it's like ESPN or whatever that wants you to be a part of them, but you understand that the expectations and the level go significantly higher. And the legacy that you can build there is going to be very, very difficult to build in a place like that when you have you're a dime a dozen at ESPN as opposed to here you're a superstar, right? And that's kind of how I look at it from a Rich Rod perspective. Like, why not set the legacy here, build, and become like a premier power in college sports, as opposed to go to, let's say, a South Carolina, where now you're competing in the SEC. You got to beat Bama, Georgia, LSU every single year just to have a shot to get some notoriety around the country. That's just such a hard thing to pull off, especially if your skill is recruiting 2- and 3-star talented players and using them in your scheme to be able to win games, which against Alabama level competition, you're just not going to be able to pull off of as much. I think that's ultimately the reason why Rich Rod stayed instead of going to South Carolina when he got offered that position. Right. So yeah,
I never blame anybody for doing what they want. Now, again, I have really no cool things about me, so I'm very content with what I do, what I am. I don't like, Rich Rod, though. Rich Rod, if he wanted to go somewhere else, I don't begrudge him. It's kind of like players with the NIL, to be honest with you. Like, I put out a while back that, Josan Sainon was going to go to the school that could give him the most NIL. And, I got a flack from a couple of his coaches, and then I DM'd him back, and I told them, I said, that's not an insult, my guy. I have no problem with him going to, and I can't say that I wouldn't have done that. I'm an 18-year-old kid. You're going to give me $600,000 more or whatever. So it's not an insult. People always have to do what's best for themselves. I just think with Brent Brennan, he just feels like this kind of feels like what Brent Brennan wants to do. This feels like his speed. And I say that in a good way.
Oh yeah, no, he feels like Tucson. He feels like U of A football for sure, 1,000,000%. Kind of like Chris Klieman over at K-State. Like he's not he didn't come through the K-State system, but he feels like a K-State kind of guy, right? Like, and so when you have those kind of coaches that kind of blend in with the identity of the city and the program that they're a part of, you feel and you want to buy into that. And listen, Brett Brennan was around during the heyday of U of A in the 90s. He understands what basketball means. He understands what football can mean. He understands what all the other sports, softball and baseball, can mean to this university and also this city. And so I'm encouraged, I'm hopeful, and I'm really optimistic about what he's going to be able to provide, because I just feel like we have a good thing. And I know a lot of people are really hesitant to say that because they don't want to believe in something that's going to ultimately make them feel foolish. But I feel like we have good people in charge, and I'm okay with that.
And I don't see, and I've said this, I was talking with some people today at practice about this. Here's the deal. Maybe he's not, who knows, maybe he's not going to be super dynamic, but I have a very, very, almost an impossible time seeing him fall on his face here at Arizona. I think from a professionalism perspective, from a resourcefulness perspective, I think worst case scenario is that you're kind of 7-5. And I don't see 7-5, 6-6, whatever the case may be. I don't see this being something where you have like a 3-win season and then you look around, you're like, oh my gosh, we have no talent. We could repeat this again. That to me is where I'm at with Brent Brennan. And I think there's obviously upside, but I don't see him being somebody that you're going to look back out and say, oh man, the Brent Brennan era,
no. I don't envision that either. I hope we look back at Brett Brennan's time and we just revere him for what he did with this program and taking it to another level. And I'm very optimistic that that's what's about to happen.
All right, Saul Bookman, is there any better time to become a PHNX diehard, my friend? Is there a better time? I don't think there is. I think it might be right now.
Right now is always a great time to become a PHNX diehard. You get all types of stuff. You get a membership card. You get a free t-shirt every single year, or hat, depending on what you want. And we got some new stuff that's about to hit the merch site for everybody. So stay tuned to that. You get discounts on tickets. You get discounts on merch. You get to hang out in the Discord and have just a tremendous time with all your people that love your team the way you do. And so that's the biggest thing about being a diehard. We're going to do more events. Listen, folks, I'm working very, very hard to try and get some things done down in Tucson. It is a little bit of a trek for me coming up from Phoenix. I was down there yesterday talking to multiple different entities and people. I'll be back there on Friday doing the same thing again. But it's about trying to make this. Listen, Mike's doing a terrific job, and this is where I'm just going to pitch about Mike real quick. Mike's doing a terrific job trying to be the voice of the fan, but also giving you the information that you need behind the scenes. And along with that, he's trying to build a community basically by himself. He doesn't have all the help that we have up here, and we're trying to change that very much. But the more people that are involved, the more people that come together as a community, the more events we put together for you guys, we want you to be involved. So become a diehard. Come be a part of our big family. It's amazing. It's terrific. You won't be disappointed. And if you are, just hit me up, and I'll see if we can make you happy.
And again, you'll also get discounts on shirts. If there's a Back the K shirt, possibly. Just saying, Back the K. Who knows?
Just saying.
Who knows? All right. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, man. Mike getting very compliments. Mike, the type of guy that waits back when his friends bend down to tie their shoe. Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate all the kind words. All right.
Listen, no, this is the kind of guy Mike is. Mike is the kind of guy that asks if you want ice cream and you say yes. And instead of just getting like a couple drumsticks, he gets a big 24 pack because he thinks that you're going to want as much as he does. And unfortunately, has to sacrifice it back in LA when U of A gets bounced out of the tournament really quickly. But the heart was all there. So I appreciate it.
He's also the type of guy that brings a burger to a meat party.
Well, he hasn't done that yet.
I mean, no. But next Wednesday, this will be Jacob Franklin will be eating a Del Taco cheeseburger on the show. This is true. Period.
You are correct.
Are you coming up here?
Yeah, he's going to come up here next Wednesday, and I'm going to eat a double Del on the show.
Let's go.
Franklin's the man, dude. I'm not going to,
I love it. I did not know that. So are we going to do a show in studio then?
Yeah. I do all of it.
I'm not going to be behind the computer this time. I'm going to be sitting in front of the camera.
Nice.
We're going to be doing a show together. It's going to be very fun, very scrumptious. But Jacob Franklin, though, the man behind the scene, the voice of God, Moses talking down on the mountain. All right. But for Jacob Franklin, the boss, Saul Bookman, the GM, the boss, all of you guys out there.
Can I say something real quick?
Mm-hmm. What do you got?
I do have some breaking news. So Jacob Franklin will not be the producer forever, obviously. But folks, I did us a solid, and I did get a U of A grad to be our new producer as well. So it'll be a total U of A podcast. No, I'm not besmirching Jacob, but he is an ASU grad, and that's his one flaw. So
yeah, I very much like that producer as well. I was texting him earlier today. He's a very, very good person. Like him. Yes. All right. But for Jacob Franklin, we won't call him a snitch today. Maybe I'll call him a snitch tomorrow, but not today. Jacob Franklin, the boss, Saul Bookman. I am merely Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A. Again, we rely on your comments. You guys are all smarter than me. I rely on all of you. You are listening to, you've been listening to the AC Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.